Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am.
This is session 4 of The Father's House, and today we're going to look at the Father in the story. And of course the Father represents God the Father. Remember, Jesus told this story in the context of Pharisees standing around him, criticising him that he was mixing with people that they regarded as sinners. Now the father in this story is the patriarch of the family. He provided everything for his family's needs, and yet he'd been willing to let his son go, giving him everything that he asked for. And the son was rejecting everything that belonged to the father, just going off doing his own thing. But of course doing his own thing brought him to a desperate place, and so he'd schemed. He could return to his father, convince him to let him be a hired servant, and that way he would get food to eat. That would solve the problem he had right at that point. But we read that while he was a long way off, the father ran to meet him. Now villages in those days were stone houses and narrow streets, and it was all quite higgledy-piggledy. So it's not as if the father could just look out the kitchen window every now and again and see if his son was coming. It meant that he had to deliberately go out to the edge of the village and watch and wait. The father never stopped seeking his son. When he did see him, he ran to meet him. Now in those days, an older man did not run. It was seen as undignified, even quite disgraceful. But this father ran. Not only did he run, but the Greek word used is the word that Paul uses for running an Olympic race. So this father wasn't just jogging to meet his son, he was going top speed. One reason for this would be the delight that he had in seeing his son, but another reason would be to get to his son before the village did, because the village had a tradition or a custom that if someone lost any of the family inheritance to a pagan, then they would be driven out of the village. And so this father is shamelessly throwing aside all customs to welcome his son back into the family. His first action was to hug and kiss the son, and that's an action of welcome. And at this point the son says this, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." Notice that the scheme for getting food has gone. He's no longer asking to become a hired servant, because this is true repentance. What he's saying, I've sinned against you, against God, and I am unworthy. What brought the change of attitude? Well, I believe it was the Father's grace. Grace is what brings real repentance. And then recognising his repentance, the Father makes sure that he's restored as a son. Give him the best robe, a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Fully restored as a son. In the Father's eyes he was lost but now found, was dead but now is alive. The Father's love for the Son was such that he acted quite shamelessly just to see his Son restored. God has acted in Jesus to see his sons and daughters restored. Jesus suffered shame on the cross. He gave everything, including his very life, that we might be restored to the Father's house.